Hello everyone and welcome. Today we are going to take a look at how to display the results of a query using output fields like charts, maps, and content controls. A query logic built in the query module can execute during application runtime, and you can display the outcome of a query in the UI. Let's see how this works on an example. Here we have a sales data for a number of salespeople from different states. Let's say we want to create a search application which will show the sales numbers, dates, and a map of the states they did the sales in. This is a fairly large dataset that consists of over 30,000 rows. Including this entire dataset in the underlying workbook would mean a significant impact on the application load times and performance. To prevent this, we can import this dataset into Spreadsheet Web and create queries to use this data in our search application. Once imported, this dataset will be available as a data map. Now let's go into the workbook which will be the underlying spreadsheet for the search application and assign name ranges. The dimensions of these named ranges are important, and we must consider the size of the results tables for each query. In the final version of the application, we're going to want to see the salesperson selection as a dropdown, the total sales number for the selected salesperson in an output content field, the state and sales figures in a table to be displayed on a states map, and finally an output grid where we can display the breakdown of sales by date, state, and the sales amount. For this, we're going to need to create 4 queries, and the results of those queries will need to be bound to name ranges in the underlying workbook. Let's begin with the salesperson dropdown field. For this selection, we're going to need to create a simple query to pull the salesperson names. We're going to need a single name range for the salesperson and a list of all salespeople for the dropdown selections. We currently have about 50 salespeople, so this list should be enough. Next, we need to display the total sales figures for the selected person. To do this, we're going to need to aggregate the sales amounts and create a query with a single row outcome. Let's create a single name range for this field as well. The third query we need to create is for the sales breakdown by states to be used on a map. For this, we need a table name range that consists of the 50 state names and the corresponding sales figures. Finally, we're going to need to create a table name range that consists of sales dates, states, salesperson names, and the sales amounts for the output grid. Right now, we don't have anyone with more than 500 sales, so we can keep this name range at 500 rows. Now let's go ahead and create a designer application and then start creating the queries for each of these fields. After selecting our data map, we can start creating the queries using that dataset. The first query we're going to need is for the list of salesperson names. We're only going to be needing the salesperson column for this field and don't need to add any conditions. Enabling select distinct values will allow us to display all names only once in the dropdown. We can now bind this query to the list of salesperson names we've created. The next query is going to be the total sales. Here, we're going to want to see the sum of the sales amount column that correspond to the selected salesperson. Adding a condition to match the salesperson name will allow us to get only the corresponding data. We're also going to want to apply an expression to sum the total sales. Selecting only the top one row will allow us to select a single name range for this query. For the states map, we need to use the state names as well as the sum of the sales amounts for the matching salesperson selection. We again need to add a condition to only retrieve the data belonging to a salesperson. Our table name range contains headers, so we need to select skip first row for the header behavior. The final query is going to be the output grid table. For this, we need the sales dates, states, salesperson name, and the sales amount. We again need to add a condition to match the results to the salesperson name selection. Since we selected 500 rows for the corresponding name range, it would be a good idea to limit the top row selection to 500 as well. Our table name range contains headers, so we again need to select skip first row for the header behavior. Now we can go back to the user interface designer and create our application. We can use the outcome of the total sales query in a content field using double curly braces. Next is adding the map. Finally, we can add our output grid. Now we can do a preview and see how the application looks.